For the latest top tips, reviews and advice, please subscribe below.
Hello and welcome to Attwoolls Outdoors with me, Mike. Today I'm giving you a bit of like a picturing / tutorial video on a product from Outwell. So with me today I've got the Outwell Canopy Tarp. Comes in two different sizes. It's got like a large version and then a medium version depending on the width of the tent. So we're going to show you how it's pitched and talk about it as we go through the process. We've also got just a purely a sort of review video which you can check out as well if you wanted to, but this will give you a bit of an understanding about how simple and easy it is to put up. So first and foremost what we'll do is just unravel it. We've got essentially three steel poles that come as standard with it, a couple of clips that allows us to clip it onto the tents, and obviously then guy ropes all the way around it. Now you can use this as a self-sufficient unit if need be, but you can also use it ideally to connect onto a tent. First thing I want to do as I spread it out is I'm looking for, if you're connecting to a tent, there on one of the longest edges is little tabs which look like that. So this basically allows us to adjust the width of how wide it needs to be. So we'll start with the closest section we are here. Now the main canopy itself is about 4 meters wide, so depending on obviously how wide your tent is, dictates how wide you want this to be. So I'm going to go with probably for the narrowest in for the time being. It's easy to alter. There's two parts to the clip. There's the end part which goes directly onto your tent, and then that part which goes onto the canopy itself. There's a little kind of bit of overlap, so you can just feed that directly through and that will kick on like so. Now even if you haven't got those tabs, you can still use this canopy. All you're going to do is, rather than clip on using these, instead what you're going to do is just use the guide points on that individual section, like you can kind of see here. So what we'll do is clip this onto the canopy and then we'll drag it over the top of the tent. It's quite a handy little addition, gives you a bit more shelter and shade, and again just keeps it a bit nicer and neater from keeping things out the wind and rain. You've got a fair amount of adjustment on this as well, so it's a universal fit. You want to bring it, make sure it's positioned so it's just over the canopy itself. If you're a bit unsure, if you have a look out for the branding, so on there will be kind of the Outwell logo. So that will be the point that you know where it is. You can see here, the Outwell logo is just there. So what we'll do is we'll just adjust this and get the tension back on it first and foremost. So we're nice and sort of centralised. A good example to have a look at is where that central seam is. So there's a central seam on the product and you want that to be approximately kind of the central part of the tent itself. So that's brilliant. What we're going to do now is just undo the guide points and just get this prepped. So we can do is always start with a middle section. There are numerous points around here where you can different eyelets you can put it into, so you haven't necessarily got to go free at the front. And like I say, you get 3 poles included with the product to start with, so it's up to you in which order you put them in. All the poles are fully adjustable as well, so you can change the height from it all. So we'll just go like so. So just insert the spike end through the eyelet and then we can basically bring that forward. I always prefer to have the middle one probably the tallest, just because naturally from a watershed point of view, in terms of getting the rain off, that's where it probably works best. And then we'll just pop that in like thing. There you go. So with the central one nice and neatly positioned, we can then do the outside. Now it's up to you wherever you choose to put a pole at the front located here or here and guide down. So again, you can really kind of help create whatever kind of canopy style you want to go for. For me, I'm going to probably put it on the ends. It just gives it a bit more lift and position it as you see fit. So in theory, you don't actually need a tent to utilise the product. You can more than happily just pitch it in its own sense, and you can always buy additional poles as well if you want to. Just kind of makes life a bit easier. So it's a great sort of extra bit of shelter on the product itself. If to help with things, sometimes if you lean the pole in, just gives you less worry about what it's going to do in the wind. And then we'll just pull in out like so, and then put it in position. We can adjust the height of it, and again with this you want to kind of come off at about a 45-degree angle, so we'll kind of go towards the camera. As you can see, we've got a bit of a dip point in the middle. That's not an issue whatsoever, because what we can do is basically guide it out on its own. You can obviously shorten the guy ropes as you need to, just to make sure it's all sort of in place. What I prefer to do is, if you get the 3 poles in position first, like this, you can then look at how much play you want it to, or want to give it, or you can even buy obviously additional poles if you want to extend it out a bit further. It's worth mentioning, obviously, it's not going to give any additional stability to your tent as such. You're more using it just for the additional shelter. So some of the central guide points you would still probably need to retain on the tent. But what you can look at doing is maybe reducing down a few. So in this instance, because you want to use it as livable space inside, you can probably take the middle one off or splay them out a little bit, because the tent still needs its own stability. Cool. So, like I say, you can add additional ones to it, but what I'm going to do is merely just utilise this, guide these sections out nice and neatly, and then we're good to go. But you can see how much extra space it gives you at the front of your tent. Certainly if it's a rainy day, you want kind of a, or even just as a sunshade, I think it works quite nicely. This almost replaces Outwell's previous model, which was the universal awning. So this is probably a bit more easy to fit. It's a bit more generic, and obviously it can be used against different branded tents, different kind of style of tents. So I think all round it works a little bit nicer. And then we've got a point for drainage. Like I said, in a prime way, you get 3 pole supply with it, but what you can also do, like I say, if you just extended and bought an extra 2, I think that would really help to lift the whole section up. I think just give yourself a bit more of a sort of sheltered area underneath. But quite handy product. It's not necessarily expensive, and I said the smaller version, which is the M version, is about 3 meters wide, about 310. It's 310 by 330 from memory, whereas this is about 4 meters by 390. So it's kind of a squarish option. And last but not least, the last thing we need to do is just put the additional guide points on the back here, going out. So like I say, if you haven't got the top points located at the top point at the top, you can just use the guide points you've got located here. So you don't really officially have to properly connect it to the tent, although it would be a bit helpful because you're not having to worry about, it's almost a secondary securing point really. So that works really quite well. But very easy, very simple, nice little concept. And the fact there's 2 sizes I think works nicely as well. Plus the fact that it's, in comparison to probably something like the Van Gogh family shelter, it's a bit smaller in terms of size, I'd say. It's not quite anywhere as big. Certainly when you go for the smaller one, I think you just get a bit more options, so you can use it on smaller tents. So even kind of Outwell's smallest, like Sunhill tent, small little free berth, that 3 meter canopy works really nicely. Actually, I'll show you in the review video kind of what it looks like. But nice, simple, easy to pitch, and that's kind of how you look at the Outwell tarp.